So in this video, we're going to continue past compound conditionals and now take a quick look at nested conditional statements. All that is you're taking an if statement and you're putting another if statement inside of it. Or you're taking part of an if statement like an elif block or an else block and putting a whole other if block inside of it. I mean, if that makes sense to you, I can show you just a tiny little bit and then it's just all good, right? The basic idea is that if you're already inside of some if block that we have already defined here from the program that we're going to be exploring with a little bit, you can just put another if inside of that. And inside of that if, you can do a bunch of stuff, and then maybe you want to make it a part of a elif block. Do we know elif yet? Yeah, we know elif. Do we know elif yet? I think so. I think you know it at this point. And once I'm inside of that elif block, I could put another if inside of there and do other stuff, right? So that's it. That's the whole idea. If that just makes sense to you, pause this video, turn it off, you're good to go. If you want to see some examples of that and kind of like what the consequences of that are, keep watching for a few more minutes. So we've got right here our, whoa, I don't want to look at that. We've got right over here our little sad, happy button where when I click on the button, I make it happy from sad. And instead of using on, contains, the button contains my mouse X, mouse Y, we did our own hit detection over here, which is great just to show compound conditionals. And we're going to leave it this way just so we can show this nested thing happening. So instead of making this all one big, long compound conditional, for the sake of this video, we're going to make it nested if statements. So, and part of that is just to show this off. Part of it is to show why you might do nested if statements. There's a couple different consequences, right? A compound conditional is going to do the entire statement all at once. It's going to check if my X, my mouse X is to the right of the left side of my button, if it's to the left of the right side of my button, if it's below the top of my button and above the bottom of my button. It's going to check all of that all at once. That's what this one big compound statement does. But let's say I wanted to check for part of it and then do something potentially and then check for another part afterwards. That you would need a nested if statement for. So we're going to do that. We're going to check one part at a time. So I'm going to get rid of this and over here, and I'm going to get rid of this whole second half of that, checking if I'm within, my mouse is within the button. And we're going to put that inside of its own if statement below. And then we're just going to tab all these guys over here. I really should learn the auto indent. And what this is going to do is first it's going to check if I'm within the boundaries x, y's with this first if statement. Then it's going to check if I'm within the boundaries in the y's. And we were doing that before, right? It was just happening all at once. When you nest your conditional statements, you're essentially doing the same thing, right? It's like I'm checking if this is true, and then after that, if this is true, I'm going to check this, and if this is also true, then I'll do this. And effectively, this is doing exactly what the other one did, right? Instead of putting an and between the two of them right over here, I just say, all right, check if this is true. And then afterwards, if this is also true, you're kind of creating your own little and in the middle there, because it will only get to this code lines 16 through 20 if both of these if statements are true, because I need to enter on line 14, and then I need to enter on line 15 before I can get to line 16 through 20. So, you're like, well, what's even the point then? Why would I ever do that? And the answer is maybe you want to do something in between, right? Because there is a case where you are between the two x's, but you're not within the y's. Maybe you're kind of like down here or something. So maybe I want to create a label that says your y is off, loser. And this will kind of, I don't know, it's just stupid. But it's just to show that, when you're using nested conditionals, you have even more control of what's happening in your program, right? Knowing all of these things allows you to do kind of whatever you want. That's the whole point of learning how to program, is being able to do kind of whatever you want and make whatever you want. Don't be good. Don't do bad stuff. So now let's take a look at what happens. When I click the button, hey, oh, duh. I have to give it a location. At mouse x masu, mouse x and mouse y. And now it'll stop complaining. So now, oh, jokes, if I click the button, it's gonna yell at me anyways. So if I go over here, it says your Y is off, loser, which is great, but it's also always gonna do that when I click the button, even if I'm clicking the right spot, because this is not inside of an if. So actually, here we go. I'm gonna do this. So you can have something always happen between those two is one thing. Using a nested if lets you check for one part and then check for the other. And if the other part doesn't work, then you can, I really hope you guys have learned elif by now. Or I guess I'll just do else. You've definitely learned at least else by now. Else's don't have that in this language. So now it's going to check if I'm between the x's. If I am between the x's, then check if I'm between the y's. If I am between the y's, click the button and we're happy to go. We're done. Otherwise, if I am between the x's, checked on line 14, and I'm not between the y's, checked on line 15, then else, then I'll mock my user and say, haha, your y's off. But it will not print that label if I'm between both simultaneously. So let's check to see if this is looking good. So clicking over here, nothing happens because I never make it into the if because I'm not within the x's there. Click the button, no labels popping up mocking me. But now if I'm between the x's, but not between the y's of my button, it's going to yell at me. And so yeah, that is an example of using nested conditionals. Like I said, if I wanted to do even more, I could go even further. I could make another if statement to check for something else. You can kind of do this forever. Be careful with your indentation, right? That actually really matters in Python for how it's going to execute. And just make sure that you're trying to make it legible and readable, and write comments. Even though I don't always write comments in these videos, you should definitely write your comments, and I promise I'm going to keep trying to get better at that. So yeah, I hope that was useful for learning nested conditionals, and I hope that helped a little bit. And you can see how now that we've got ifs and if-ands and if-ors, and now we have nested conditionals too, that you can really like do some crazy stuff, right? You could just let your imagination run wild, go make something cool.